There we are. Be right back. Get a beverage.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, awesome. Good evening, Mobtown, and welcome to this special edition of Mobtown Live. Tonight, we will be airing a very special interview that was first broadcast on 13 WNET in the 1970s. But first, um, I want to just make some announcements. We are on holiday break. So get cozy, get comfortable. We just didn't want to leave you with nothing between now and the end of the year.
Yeah, this
So,
is just
first,
our pre-break.
this is our pre break. So, first, we have this incredible interview that Maya Angelou did with James Baldwin, and I will talk all about that. Um, Please, we also will be having a holiday special Mobtown Lifestyle on probably December 14th, which is a Monday. So, what are days? But stay tuned for that. And it's gonna be great. We're gonna do all the holidays. We're also the Mobtown Ballroom Room is doing an event called Baltimore Saves America, a fundraiser for Georgia's runoff election, which is coming up on December 5th. Um, and this event is to raise money so the Democrats can take the Senate
Pew pew
in
pew.
the Georgia runoff election. There are some incredible candidates running, and we want to support them. We've got acts from all over the country that are going to be participating, politicians. It's going to be awesome. So save the date, December 5th, December 14th, Mobtown Holiday Special. And now, and the other thing we're going to do tonight is re-air our episode from last week featuring Asalka Smith and Nellie Sorensen because no joke, YouTube went down the tubes. It
And
just
Nest
died.
and Nest went down yesterday, so you could say it is the end times, but
We're
don't.
breaking the internet. So we're gonna re-air that episode, so you'll have the benefit of watching it. And anything that you donate tonight to our Venmo, Mobtown Dash Live, we will be using to help pay those artists who are our guests. So check it out. The interview that we're going to watch with you tonight first aired on 13 WNET, like I said, which was New York's first public TV station. Um, how cool is public broadcasting?
So
So
cool.
cool. You're
So
gonna
cool.
honestly is like a backbone of the inspiration for this show. There was this program called Assignment America, which ran from 1974 to 1975, and Maya Angelou was one of the interviewers, and we're going to be rebroadcasting this episode, which is called Conversation with a Native Son, after James Baldwin's great essay collection, Notes of a Native Son. So this was a challenge to put together because introducing Maya Angelou and James Baldwin to a group of people, regardless of whether you are already fans of theirs or don't or are not familiar with their work, is a challenge because um, they are just the legend of legends. So just a little bit of background to put this in context for you. Maya Angelou was born in 1928 in St. Louis, Missouri, and she has become one of the most renowned and incredible and influential voices of our time. She has over 50 honorary doctorate degrees.
Jeez.
She is a celebrated poet, memoirist, educator, dramatist, producer, actress, historian, filmmaker, and civil rights activist. With the guidance of her friend, the novelist James Baldwin.
Who loyal viewers may remember as a character invented by Michael Seguin to put plays on stage.
who loyal viewers may remember as one of the greatest American writers ever. Um, so, with his guidance, she started to work on the book that would become I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, um, which is like, it was banned. Now it's taught all over the world. Um, and they were this interview we're going to take a look at is just a glimpse into this incredible friendship between these two intellectual luminaries who clearly have so much love for each other. And I want to share an excerpt of a tribute that Maya Angelou made to James Baldwin at his funeral service on December 8th, 1987, at the Cathedral of St. John the Divine in New York City. So this is what she writes. Speeches will be given, essays written, and hefty books will be published on the various lives of James Baldwin. Some fantasies will be broadcast, and even some truths will be told. Someone will speak of the essayist James Baldwin in his role as the biblical prophet Isaiah, admonishing his country to repent from wickedness and create within itself a clean spirit and a clean heart. Others will examine Baldwin the playwright and novelist, who burned with righteous indignation over the paucity of kindness, the absence of love, and the crippling hypocrisy he saw in the streets of the United States and sensed in the hearts of his fellow citizens. I will speak of James Baldwin, my friend and brother. I first met Jim fleetingly in the boîtes of Paris when he and I and the world were young enough to believe ourselves independently salvageable. But we became friends in the late 50s, just as the United States was poised to make its quantum leap into the future as Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, and other Southerners were girding themselves for the second Civil War in 100 years, while Malcolm X was giving voice to the anger in the streets and in the minds of Northern Black city folk. I knew Jim loved me when he gave me to Gloria and Paul Wilmer and David Baldwin and all of the rest of his siblings, when he took me to Mother Baldwin and said, "Just what you don't need, another daughter, but here she is." I knew that he knew Black women may find lovers on street corners and even in church pews, but brothers are hard to come by and are as necessary as air and as precious as love. James Baldwin knew that Black women in this desolate world, Black women in this cruel time which has no soundness in it, have a crying need for brothers. He knew that brothers' love redeems a sister's pain. His love opened the unusual door for me, and I am blessed that James Baldwin was my brother. So, with the incredible words of Maya Angelou in this space, Hachi, take us away.
Can do, Abby.
Thank you. It's lovely here.
It's a nice place.
Looks a little like south of France.
Well, it depends on the point of view.
James Baldwin is an essayist, a novelist, a poet, and playwright. He is also my friend and brother and teacher and pen pal. Since he lives permanently in the south of France and I live in Northern California, we keep in contact by mail. Recently, we met in Los Angeles and had the chance to continue our conversation face to face. When you leave your house in France and come to the United States, when you leave your adopted home and come to your real home, what kind of response do you have inside yourself?
I miss my family.
Mm-hmm.
I miss a lot of people, you know, who are part of me.
Keep you alive.
You know.
Yes.
And a certain kind of speed, energy, beat, which only American black people have.
I know.
You know? I miss that. And you say my home, it's not exactly my home. It's a kind of asylum. It's a place where I can work. I have a lot of work to do. And if you are in a situation where you're always resisting and resenting, it's very hard
It takes too much energy.
Well, you can't write a book.
No.
You can't write a sentence.
No.
And I asked my brother David. We were driving through Harlem the other day. I was in Harlem. I was living there. And I said to him, I wonder what would happen to me if I'd stayed. And you know David.
I know David.
Because, I mean, you know, because I also wanted to stay. You know, I didn't want to go. David laughed. That laugh.
That terrible knowing laugh.
He said, "You be dead. Everybody else is."
That's right. And you look around at your friends long dead, lost.
Well, David is 43. I'm 50. None of us, neither of us know
being 50.
About being 50?
Yes, but that's coming. Good.
Neither of us know anybody our age. And my oldest nephew, who's 27, knows one person his age. Baby, this is a high-priced country.
Your family is closely knit.
I'm a very lucky cat.
You're very lucky. I find myself very lucky because I've been adopted into that family. So I find
That's not true. You marched into it. You claimed my mother. I saw you.
I took it, didn't I?
You did.
I'm going to talk about mother in a while.
Go on.
But what does the family feel about you living in south of France? I mean, living away from them without, say, an arm reach distance, an arm out of
Sweetheart,
arm
you have
reach.
to understand. You have to understand what happens to my mother's telephone when I'm in town. The people who call her up and say what they will do to me if she doesn't make me shut up. You also got to remember that I've been writing, after all, between assassinations. But if you were my mother or my brother, you would think, who's next?
That's Mama.
It was extraordinary. The woman raised 9 children and knew every one of them. The difference between me and George, the difference between me and David, the difference between
You and Wilma.
and Willie, and all 5 girls. And though she was scared to death. Oh, no, really, really scared to death.
You mean of your father? Or
No,
after
scared to
this
death of what's going to happen to us.
Yes, yes.
Because she knew something we didn't know.
Of course, you couldn't.
And there we went.
Yeah.
And she never blackmailed us.
Yes.
And she just, you know, when I went to Paris, 1948, it was a rainy day. Mama came downstairs like that. Paula was upstairs. Paula was
That's the
5 years
baby.
old, the baby. And you can't explain to a baby, you know, why you have to do what you have to do. And she wouldn't talk to me, and she was crying. Mama, the taxi drove away. But she let me go. She let it. I think at bottom she knew how much, maybe she knew better than I did, how much I loved them. And I didn't want her to see me turn into a junkie.
Right.
No.
Yeah, a prostitute. In any way.
You
Right.
know, in many, many ways.
Right.
Go to jail, because nobody could call me nigger. I'd done the post office bit. I'd worked for the Army. I'd been up and down those streets.
Yeah.
So now I had 5 minutes. And I had to jump to save my family.
And they let you
That
go.
sounds very grandiose.
No, but I know. Because I do know a story. I know that when you went to France, that with Mother Baldwin, with all those children, that from time to time, one of the lovely stories about your family is that from time to time, David and George, or the older boys, would work with coal in the winter, ice in the summer, selling, and on welfare, whatever, aid to just something kinds of families, and still would manage sometimes to send you a little check.
Oh, I remember.
In France. I mean, to think of a black American family in Harlem who had no pretensions to great literature and so forth as such. I'm using in pips. Great literature. And to have the oldest boy leave home and go to Paris, France, and then for them to save up enough pennies and nickels and dimes to send a check of $150 to him in Paris, France.
But that's what people don't really know about us.
One of the things I think, I believe that we are Americans. It is true.
You believe it?
Well,
I know it.
We are black Americans. We have our feet, our souls, our hearts in...
We have paid for this country.
Absolutely.
That's why I can never leave it, by the way.
I know.
No.
Never. That's the lovely thing about...
At least I never deluded myself into thinking that.
About that line that you can't go home again. You can't even leave.
You can't leave home. You can't leave home. You carry it with you.
Of course. No. And then create a whole atmosphere.
There are no Harlem barbershops. There are beautiful barbershops in Paris. They know Harlem barbershop in Paris.
No, I know.
No.
A beauty shop where you can hear who's doing what to whom at what time and what.
There's not that speed, that beat, that fire, you know. I owe my adopted country, as you put it, a lot, because it left me alone.
Yes. And when French people or Europeans ask you about your country, about the United States of America, or as I constantly say on anywhere, it's what James Baldwin calls it, these yet to be United States of America. Jim, what is your response to the question?
I had to go to Germany for the publication of Beale Street. I was working very hard somewhere in Paris, in fact, in libraries and doing research, right? You know. And I wanted to cancel the tour because I was into what I was, into my singing. What I was doing.
In your groove.
And I didn't want to, I got back home to St. Paul and discovered that the USIS, the tour was for 5 German cities. And the USIS had broken its contract with my German publisher, saying that the U.S. Information Service is not here to publicize novels and novelists.
How had they had the contract in the first place?
Well, in the normal way, the publisher, the German publisher or the French publisher, for that matter, if you come to your town and you're an American writer, it's a kind of courtesy to the American embassy.
I see.
And they broke the contract. And this was all over the German press. In effect, I was being banned by my own government. That's not the end of the story. I called my poor brother David, who just left, and said, you better come back.
David,
come and take me to Germany. Because once I was banned, I had to go.
Of course. You had no choice.
I had to go.
Of course.
And I went. Now, this is on German soil, right? And I was in a very difficult position because the Germans wanted to say how much better they were than the Americans.
To blacks, yes, and to you in particular.
And so I had to say, you got to remember,
1939.
You got no. I said you got to remember it all started in Europe. That's how we got America. And I know this was the Third Reich. You know, and I'm not going to let you congratulate yourselves about the disastrous performance in my own country because I know your performance too.
That's right. And in Africa.
As far as our celebrated Negro problem is concerned, you know, if you really want to know what that is, look out the window. Look out your window right now and see who's sweeping your streets. You call it the foreign worker problem. We call it slave labor.
They're Italians and
Maybe
Arabs.
we left them fighting with each other.
Jim, I tell you, your life. There are a million questions I have to ask, and I have to ask you to direct yourself to some what they call heavy. Young people have, especially young whites, have found that word, and they attach it to anything.
Yeah, they found the word beat.
Yeah. You said something. A man had a question to you about homosexuality.
Oh, yeah.
And you had a response to it. And I would like to hear it again and again and again.
I said, it's a weary, weary, weary question. No. I said, homosexual is not a noun. It might be a verb, transitive. It is certainly an adjective, but it is not a noun. So that's the question means you don't know anything about human experience, where it can take you, what it can do. You know, and if you categorize the world in that way, then you lock yourself out from so much. I know boys, I swear to you, sweetheart, I know cats, I'm talking about white cats now, too, football player types who went on the needle, and then finally died because they're afraid somebody will call them a faggot. Well, all I know about human life, I don't know much.
Less and less?
Yes, when I was young, I knew a lot. Now I don't know nothing, which is a great relief. But, but all I know about human life is if I love you, I love you. And if I love you and duck it, I die.
Exactly. Exactly. But you see, out of that, I think, is, for me, I see the nature of love. The ability to dare, to challenge despair, and to dare to love. Which
well, you see, you can't prophesy it. You can't say, you cannot make a decision like I'm going to fall in love with,
June the
girl that I
23rd,
marry,
right.
all that Tin Pan Alley jazz, right? You don't know. And you have to trust life. You have to trust life.
And when you say trust life, of course, that means all of it.
Yes,
the whole.
all of it.
Okay, then what does that mean about death? I mean,
about death?
Yes, about death. If one trusts life, is death not in that circumference?
Well, I think, that the only way to live is know you're going to die. If you're afraid to die, you'll never be able to live.
Hey.
You know?
Hey.
And nobody knows anything about death.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
And that is also just another word.
For singing the blues. Death is another
we don't know
word.
anything about
Right.
it. You know.
Right.
When I go, I'll go. And where I'm going, I don't know. It might be, beautiful. It might be nothing. It might be, I think it's a cycle.
I do.
No.
I agree.
I trust my ancestors. Because I know, however this may sound, I know what happens to me when I'm in trouble. I know what my mother taught me, which was to love everybody.
Yep.
And when I'm in trouble, I listen to something. When I'm writing, I'm listening to something.
Yeah.
Because, all this bit about being a writer or being a star and all of that. The truth is, you become a writer because a day comes in your life, you have to accept it. You have to accept the fact that you're not a truck driver.
Yes.
You know,
even if you loved it.
No, ditch digging. I've done, I ain't never driven a truck, but I can still dig a ditch. That is, it's a division of labor in the world. Some people can do this.
Yes.
Some people do that.
That's right.
And the people who produced you, which is what I mean by my ancestors. I'm a kind of poet, and I come out of a certain place, a certain time, a certain history.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And the people who produced me, whether or not they always loved me or liked me, or
they produced you.
They produced me because...
And you are the total of
and
that.
that is my gig.
Right. Jim, recently, you had a 50th birthday.
Oh, yeah, I'm 50 years old. Isn't that astounding?
And beautiful.
I don't believe that.
I don't either, but I mean, you've made a statement
don't
about
believe
it. What do you think about being 50?
I said to you that it seems very unfair because you're dealing with numbers, right?
Right.
I'm 20 years away from 30.
Yeah, not bad.
And I'm 20 years away from 70.
Not bad.
Now, that seems a little unfair. Unfair in the sense that, all right, here we go. You can't go back.
Yeah.
It's 20 years, between 30 and 50 and 20 to 50 and 70, which means for me, finally, that I will have to hang around a while.
And it also means that you're closer, you said, to 70 than you were
I'm
to
much closer
30.
to 70 than I am to 50. But something else happens to you when you realize that. Something else happens to you. You realize that now you got to use the time. You got to use the time. I ain't gonna live another 50 years. Given my temperament and my stubbornness, I might live another 30 years. All bets are off.
Right.
But it does mean you gotta use the time.
Could you stay alive, vital and productive, without your family?
No. No way. No way. If I didn't know that was at my back.
Yes.
The net, I'm on a tightrope.
Right.
Ain't no net on that tightrope. Each time out, it's
You're
higher.
out there.
It's higher. And you gotta got a certain safety. I really have a certain safety because we love each other.
Okay, let me just ask you this. How do you cope with success? And after that, if you want to weave them together, it's fine with me. How do you cope with despair? Despair in front of the fact that the world is saying you're a success. Okay, so, okay?
I think, I don't know.
Hmm?
Well, in my own case, in a paradoxical fashion, which I cannot possibly explain, what is called success in my own case, right? What came out of despair?
Of course.
No.
Of course. Life out of death, death out of life.
That's how you learn to live with despair.
Mm.
If you can live with despair, success, I must say, is a little like finding yourself on a runaway horse. Because you never see it coming. And also, in a very serious way, it is not possible for an artist to be a success. No.
Then would you say that again?
I said it is not possible for an artist to be a success.
Thank you.
Once you think of yourself as a success,
You're finished.
you forget it.
Finito.
Forget
Because
it.
you know what I find is that you begin to believe your own publicity.
You begin
That's
to take your
one.
identity from other
From
people.
something else, and you stop experimenting because somebody says, well, when you did so-and-so, that was such a success. Why don't you do that again?
Look, when I wrote Hotel on the Mountain, which is, God help us, 1952, I am 50. But I knew something. It's very hard to describe. I knew, and Go to the Mountain was a success.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, young man's success. You know,
Right.
young man's book, and everybody fell in love with me. I was I was going to be the great new folklore hero. But I thought, no, I'm a writer. I'm not going to write Go Tell It on the Mountain again.
73 times. Go Tell It on the Mountain.
So I
Return.
did a play, which I knew nobody would do, The Amen
The
Corner.
Indian Corner, yeah.
Put it in my trunk for years and years.
11 years, in fact, before it was produced.
Put it in my trunk, you know. One of my finger exercises. 'Cause I was not going to write another novel
Right.
at that moment. And then at Giovanni's Room, very much as a finger exercise too, and also in order to confront something I had to deal with in myself. Because one of the dangers of being a black American, and certainly a black American man, is there's such a complex of ambiguities to deal with, you know, such a complex of poses, you know.
Right. Roles to play.
And I'd been playing a certain role. You know, I was a stud, you know, and I didn't want to drown there neither, you know, and I wanted to figure out, to tell the truth to myself.
Yep.
About where it is, you know, what is it? This male, female, man, woman, black, white,
Right. Up, down.
you know?
Right.
And I had to try to deal with that. Well,
So Giovanni's Room came out of that.
when it comes to it, I wrote Mountain, I wrote Amen Corner, forget it. I wrote The Notes of a Native Son, forget it. It was a remainder. Giovanni's Room was a certain kind of hit because nobody believed the man who wrote Go Tell It on the Mountain
Could also.
Right,
or
Giovanni's
would.
Room,
Not
or
only
would.
could, but would. But there are those who say Giovanni's Room until another, that was one of your greatest and most perfect books.
A book is always flawed.
I know.
And the writer knows it better than the critics do. He knows where the flaws are.
Long before.
know, And you become a writer by... I wrote Go Tell It on the Mountain about God knows how many times. But you have to accept the fact that, all right, this is not Hamlet. It ain't the Brothers Karamazov, which have been written already, by the way.
And well,
This is me, you know. And if you don't, you know, at a certain point you cut the performance off, and you got to get it out of the house, so you can start again.
is there any time in life when you start a project that you're not afraid? Scared.
I'll tell you about No Name in the Street, which, after all, was written between assassinations. I rewrote it and tore it up. I finally, as I say in the end of the book, I had to reconcile myself to the fact that I was never going to be able to finish it. Because it was not a journalistic assignment. It was something I had to do. It was involved with all the headlines, you know. It was a very public, you know, in a sense, document dealing with
Right.
a lot of public events. I finished it, as I put it on my desk. My brother David came to see me, because David always knows that I'm in trouble. And he read it. Came down to the office and he read the book. Didn't say a word. Went back upstairs. And he said, have you mailed it yet? I said, no. So he went upstairs.
This is in St. Paul.
In St. Paul.
De Vence.
In St. Paul
southern
de
France.
Vence, south of France. In the hills.
Right.
The next morning he came downstairs and he looked at me, picked up the book, and he said, ain't you got no envelopes?
Mail it off.
And he mailed it.
Mail it off.
He mailed it. Because he knew there's a moment, you know, after all, I don't want to go into this really, but, you know, I loved Malcolm and he got his head blown off, right? I loved Medgar, he got his head blown off, you know, and I loved Martin, got his head blown off. And I'd worked with Bobby Kay, and I'd worked a little bit with JFK, and Lord have mercy. Wow, ain't nothing I'd done, the typewriter keys, which saved nobody. And it took me a very long time. That's why I ended up in the hospital.
I know.
It took me a very long time to reconcile myself to trying to be a writer again, because one is always trying to be a writer. I don't care what the world says.
I know that.
No.
That's like trying to be a good Christian,
one is
a
trying.
good Jew, a good Muslim,
One is
a
trying.
poet. If you're 80, you get up and you try to make that fit you
That's
again.
right. Yeah.
That cloak you
That's
put
right.
down last
That's right.
night. Exactly. Oh, I have no argument.
What David did really was point out to me in his laconic fashion that I had to keep the faith.
For a transcript of tonight's program, please send $1 to Assignment America, WNET 13, Box 345, New York, New York, 10019.
take you out to dance and maybe find some sweet romance. But you can't, so it's Mobtown Live. I want to see the friends I miss, or give my mom a kiss, or get my hair cut right, or just sleep through the night. But you can't, so it's Mobtown Live. Mobtown Live, we'll drink with you forever. Mobtown Live, in dark and stormy weather. Mobtown Live, what else is there to do? Bye, Trumpy. Bye. But pandemic together. So put on your Wednesday best. At least the top, I guess, will take you to the moon. It's live to your bedroom. It's tonight, and it's Mobtown Live.
Oh, there we
Here
are.
we are. Welcome
Hi.
to Mobtown Live, everybody. Thanks so much for coming and watching our show.
That was Abby,
a
as
qu-
always, the treasure.
Yeah, we're all in much better form than last week. So I think that's good. Not that we're not all still terrified, but things are looking up, I would say. Other than the internet here in Baltimore, which is not looking up, it's looking terrible. And so if we have technical difficulties tonight, please bear with us, and we're sorry. Hachi, who has been quarantined because he's responsible, not sick though, is trying to operate with like a sort of skeleton crew of hardware and software. And
Heroically.
Yeah, heroically. So give it up for Hachi, everybody. And I hear them cheer. So Michael, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. I mean, I'm not nearly as optimistic as you are, but we're going to get into fascism at the end. But I feel like it's kind of a coin flip between like maybe some progress, and then the alternative is like Darth Vader, but tacky. You know, not cool Darth Vader.
Yeah, I think it's not that I'm as optimistic as I sound. It's that I'm trying to, pump the crowd or whatever.
I'm stockpiling canned food.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited about tonight because we have Nelly coming on to play awesome music. You know Nelly from Haint Blue, Michael.
Oh yes, I'm very excited.
And then Aselika Smith is here to talk about her podcast, The Colored Girl Beautiful, which is so good. So I'm really stoked on that. Couple of quick things. Please remember to like and subscribe. Apparently, that's an important thing that you're supposed to do. Also, we have a suggested cover charge of $10, which you can send on Venmo to @Mobtown-Live. And the purpose of that is to pay the artists out each week. And then we take a small cut for the show so that we can buy new equipment and things like that when we need to, which in the new year, I think we'll be pumping up things a little. So
but think about it. When you go to bed tonight, having watched Mobtown Live, do you want to lay your head to your pillow, not having donated $10 to artists? Artists? No, you don't want that. So just do it now.
Yeah,
get it over with.
And to tonight's artist, Nelly, who's just adorable and has, well, I guess I was gonna say has big watery eyes. That's kind of creepy. But what I mean is that imagine her sad face if you don't give the money, unless you can't, in which case keep watching the show. That's fine.
Yeah. Get your
so
mom
like
to
and
donate
subscribe. What'd you say?
Oh, get your mom to donate or something.
Yeah.
If you can't.
Yeah.
Find $10.
So a couple other things that I wanted to touch on. One, Joe Biden won the election. If you believe the hype. No, I'm just kidding. he won the election. And Maryland just came out with the COVID tracking app on our phones. Have you downloaded it yet, Michael? Oh wait, you don't need to download it. It just shows up.
It just shows up, I believe. You need to like participate in it, though, don't you? You got to be able to like.
Yeah, you go to settings, and then like this new thing pops up that says exposure notifications, and then you click on it, and it gives you the option to opt in. And then if you get COVID, you press that button, and it alerts anyone who you've been near who also has the tracking thing on. Doesn't keep track of your name or who you are or whatever. It just tells you.
I'm gonna do that shit tonight. This is like the one time I will be okay with the government tracking me.
And if you aren't a rich person, you can download the app. But for iPhone,
cool.
click the thing. But the poor people, we gotta get the app.
The poppers, yeah.
I'm excited about that. And dear swing dancers, I know many of you are like, oh, I don't want the government tracking me. Yeah, me neither. But I bet you want to swing dance more. So probably you should just let them track you, and then maybe we can, get back to life someday.
Yeah.
So is Acelica in the waiting room? No. Cool.
Do we have to yammer some?
Yeah, well, I told her we were going to. There's no rush. I was just making sure.
I want to yammer about this whole can I yammer?
Yeah, please. You don't need to ask my permission.
So the city tightened up restrictions and everything, and a bunch of people sent us things going, oh no, we're so sorry. How do we fight the man? And it made me think, some of us are confused as to who the man is. The city tightening up restrictions on businesses to protect the public is not an act of oppression. The person that we are angry at is restaurants and bars that are not.
This part is so boring.
Basically packing out.
Get on with it, Michael.
The virus / anybody who is behaving like a douche in those establishments, because sometimes they're trying to control it, but people are like, woo, I don't care, I'm 25. You're 25-year-old. You're not going to make it 26 if I find you, because those places get in trouble means we get in trouble. We get shut down. It ain't the government's fault on this one. Usually it is, but this time it's the people. That was my rant. I got more for today, though.
Am I still here?
Yeah.
Okay, my internet connection just turned off.
Are any of us still here, Sarah?
I have no idea, Sarah.
It's like month 20 of this pandemic.
So if they don't catch us now, they can catch us later.
Seems good.
Okay, cool. I agree with that, Michael, and I think it's interesting. I can understand why a number of our people think that it's unfair that a place like the Ballroom, which has outdoor seating that's small and safe, no indoor drinking or anything like that, why we have to close. I got to be honest, that executive order was really
Yes, thank
hard
you,
to figure
Dennis.
out.
They don't know how YouTube works, so I haven't told them about the bell yet.
Sure, yeah. But so I'm frustrated too that things like the casinos can be open and restaurants or like bars that serve food can be open inside, even though we think we can't be open outside. At the same time, though, I think in order to pull off restrictions that are this vast, they need to be able to delineate the groups somewhere.
Bell?
And the style of license that they have is the way that they're doing it. And that makes some sense, I think.
Thank you, dear viewers.
We're with broad strokes and we're getting sort of splattered.
Right. Though I, do suspect that the people who were in the room with Jack Young got.
See, this is how fair use works. I just have to talk over it, and now I own this content.
Did, but still, point is, we are happy to shut down if it means less people dying.
And since last week, you shut down even more. Thanks, Hogan.
Over the top with rebelling against the wrong things.
Sarah, as pillar of the small business community and the service community,
what
advice
Michael.
Would you have for people who are going out to a bar or a restaurant?
This is cool. I can make jokes I should have made last week.
I think it's almost like sex in the positive consent way. Meaning when you walking up to a table, taking your mask off until somebody says, please put it on, is a douchey thing to do. Because You're relying on them being too afraid that you're one of those weirdos who's going to flip out at them.
I don't remember this part at all.
You know, the way that I approach it when I eat outdoors at a restaurant is
oh wait, yeah, because the internet was all fucked.
Questions about
yeah, keep going, Sarah.
Okay with.
This is interesting.
I stay seated. I do not carry my drink around. I put my mask on in between bites.
See, masks are like onions.
And sit far away.
You should always have another mask under your first mask.
The main thing is just to follow directions and ask if you're not clear. At the same time, I also think it's important to know the rules that they're being held to and uphold them yourself, even if the staff isn't telling you, because sometimes everyone is dealing with a lot right now, and your general waiter and waitress are, trying to balance a lot of different things, and they might not be up on all the regulations. You still don't want to put the business at risk, even if you're not being told that you have to do all of these different things. If you know the rules, just do them. Yeah, that makes sense, right?
Well said. And don't tip 20%. That is not the standard anymore. Until the pandemic is over, it's like minimum of 30.
Right. Yeah, I would say tip a lot. Also, if people are giving you things for free, tip them more, because that is the right thing to do.
Glad I got that off my chest.
Yeah, I'm glad. Do you have any thoughts on the election, Michael?
I mean, some of that is going to feature in my discussion later, but
yes.
Fundamentally, I think that by any metric of modern elections, Joe Biden won handily. It might be more than 5 million in the popular vote, and it looks like it's going to be quite a few electoral votes. So people saying it was a squeaker. Also, people saying that like the horror that there are 40% of the country or 45% that support Trump is like the real problem. It's kind of true. On the other hand, it's also like 40% of America has always been douchebags at a minimum. I mean, slavery, segregation, like we've never had a huge majority of sane people, and that's some golden age thinking right there. The idea that you could go back and there was a time where a bunch of Americans were like, let's just be reasonable people and take care of each other.
Yeah, it's a little bit make America great again, which, don't buy the hype. But at the same time, I think the other thing that bothers me about that is like, you can have all sorts of problems with the Democratic establishment. You can have all sorts of problems with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and, us good radical liberals can fight the man in every form or whatever. But realistically, to say that Joe Biden is just as bad, or to like not be relieved because Trump wasn't reelected because the Democrats are just as bad or something, I think is like pretty stupid and kind of offensive, because frankly, if I had a country full of half Nazis, I'd rather them be run by not Hitler than Hitler, Yeah,
it's a very juvenile position. I mean, a friend of mine referred to that phenomenon as like the Bernie Sanders thing from 2016. It's like, if my guy doesn't win, and this is the first time I've been involved in politics, nothing wrong with that. That's a very heartbreaking scenario. I hate to say it, but adults, I think, ultimately understand that politics and generally morality is not you don't win it. You don't like conquer and then rule. It's a constant, forever, until the sun explodes battle to maintain some sliver of human rights and decency. And the history of the world has not actually been fraught with that. It's a very short-term experiment. I'm going to let Acelica in. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
But hold on. Just in breaking news, Mobtown Live is able to call Alaska, apparently. I hadn't checked for a couple days, and it looks like Alaska is red.
Shocking. Yeah, it's because there's no women there.
We're calling Alaska. That's funny.
You heard it here.
Well, so we've got Acelica. Let's let Acelica in, and I'm going to chat with her about her podcast. Hi, Acelica.
Hi there.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Good. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
I am so excited. I forgot, honestly, I'm a little ashamed of it. I forgot how freaking amazing your podcast is.
Aww.
Until I re-listened to a bunch of season 1 today. I had already listened when it came out. But it's so great.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. That means a lot.
So your podcast is called The Colored Girl Beautiful.
Mhm.
And it was named after a book by Azalea Hackley, who my understanding was a singer and political activist and Black woman who was around in the late 1800s, early 1900s.
Yes.
And her book, which has the same name as your podcast, was written in 1916, and it's a letter to young Black girls and women at the time.
Yes.
And so your podcast takes the form of you writing letters back to her and sharing stories of complex Black women from all different walks of life who you interview on the show.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, that's perfect.
Cool. How long has it been around? When did it start?
The show was released back in October of 2019, but the idea I've had since I think 2014 or 15.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Did the form of it, was that part of the original idea, or did the form come later?
It was not. I actually started this as my thesis project. It is this podcast is actually the subject of my thesis. I'm a graduate of the University of Baltimore, their integrated design program. And even though I was a design student, for our thesis, they encourage us to have like a practical, project to complete. And I had originally thought about republishing the book, and like in an ebook form, and then maybe even physically. And that is actually something I plan to do still. But originally it was just going to be sort of my musings. I mean, it's taken a lot of different forms, if I'm honest. I had this whole like interactive ebook idea, and but because storytelling is a medium that I really enjoy, I am a podcast junkie. I listen to so many shows.
Me too.
Yeah. So it just made sense for me to do it this way. And I feel like it's a good way to sort of convey like the meaning and feeling behind the words that I'm writing and what I'm trying to get across with the show itself, if that makes sense.
That's really interesting. So when in the beginning of the show, when you're framing it, you talk about how you first heard of Azalea and how she was sort of a different kind of Black woman than the ones that you were taught about as you were growing up.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, what drew you to her rather than anyone else?
Well, I mean, I learned about her because one of my classmates brought up her book in one of her projects. And so I didn't, I wasn't like seeking information necessarily, or I mean at all, really. It just, I happened upon it because of a classmate of mine. So, but when I discovered the book, I heard the title. I thought, oh, that's intriguing. And then I looked it up and started reading. I just became obsessed with the text. I've realized over the course of doing this work that my knowledge of my Black history is really bookended with slavery and civil rights. The bulk of what I remember going over and over and over in school was slavery and civil rights. And there's a literal, actual whole entire 100 years between those events, like in a literal 100 years that I have very little knowledge about. There's I feel like the token Black that we all sort of learn about, the same handful of people who came, you hear about from that, that Reconstruction era after slavery and before civil rights and of course during Jim Crow as well. But it was really profound to me to discover that there was a Black woman doing this sort of work during that time, after slavery, during Jim Crow, before civil rights, being an activist, making her voice heard, deciding for herself who she wanted to be and how she wanted to be perceived. making that like her whole thing, like moving about as she pleased in the world. And that was just really striking to me. I hadn't heard of that. And I mean, I know now that there are lots of other women in that category, but I didn't at the time, I didn't have a lot of knowledge about it. And I mean, also to be fair, because of this sort of limited perspective of what history was for Black people that I had, I just didn't, I hadn't thought to look any further into it. I just, my knowledge was sorely lacking.
Yeah, no, I mean, and it makes sense that I think to some degree it's intentional, or was intentional originally, to, frame Black identity as being victims of slavery and heroes for overcoming it, and then the end. When like basically all of American culture, especially all of the good things like the music and the dance and the art and it was all created by Black people, and yet we call it American, but then don't teach that element of American history. So that's cool. I was interested in some of the things that you talked about around her and why you picked her, especially when you talked about how she's not necessarily always a sort of perfect narrator by 2020 standards, and that she pushes for what we would now probably call respectability politics, where like, I think the example you used was that she was telling young girls that the best thing to be noticed for was being quiet. And so like the idea that if you do the things that white people want, you'll succeed in the world. And you point out that that is not something you agree with, and can be really destructive. And I'm wondering if you could explain sort of how you grappled with that complexity when you decided to go with her anyway.
Yeah. So this is, probably one of my favorite things about this text is that it is layered and complex and not simple and straightforward. When you look at this book through a 2020 lens, you will find sexism, you will find respectability politics, you will find a lot of things that wouldn't sit well with, any of us living today who wants to combat all of those isms. But I thought that it was really important to acknowledge the whole of one, who she was as a person, because none of us get it right all of the time. And I think more importantly, it's essential to contextualize those statements that she was making. Right now in 2020, the idea of respectability politics is absolutely untenable. But to assert yourself as an upstanding citizen, outwardly portrayed in the way that you dressed and kept yourself clean and neat and tidy, was, a way in the early 1900s to say, to sort of establish who you are and that you do have a right to exist in this world, in a space that was very actively combating you.
And it's like a safety precaution.
Yeah. Absolutely. And so there's this quote at the beginning, this dedication in the beginning of the book that says, to Black girls whom I love. She wrote this book lovingly, and with care and concern for Black women. That care and concern looks different, it looked different then than it would now, but it is not any less loving. And I think that's important to acknowledge. And I wanted to give space for that and not just sort of throw it away and say like, oh, we don't do that anymore, and so this doesn't matter. I wanted to, take a deeper look into where she was coming from, and be like mindful and respectful of that and how I was looking, and also acknowledging at the same time that like, this is not something that I'm going to do today, now. But I do want to, recognize what she was doing at the time and how radical it was and meaningful and essential. And it's something that I don't want us to forget. But yeah, I just wanted to make sure to create space for, you know, who she was and how that was important for her time, while also acknowledging that things have changed and, you know, we have a little bit of a different perspective now, but that doesn't make her work any less important and her message any less important.
And it gives you an opportunity to sort of hone your own perspective on what you do believe now, while, you know, not hiding yourself from perspectives that you might disagree with.
Right. Because there's space for all of that.
Mm-hmm. One of my favorite things about the podcast is how you're doing something that is so rare right now, in the sense that I think that, like, there's lots of opportunities where her book could have become popular right now, and then immediately she was canceled, you know, and that, you know, a lot of us, I think, especially in the more liberal circles, have a tendency to, lately at least, feel like being able to excuse or explain or sort of look at all somebody's shortcomings or perceived faults because they also have good things to offer. I think a lot of us view that as compromising our integrity, or as like being privileged for being able to do that. And the thing that your podcast is making me think about is how destructive it can be. Like, it's yet again a tool that was meant to help people, this cancel culture or whatever, and can quickly be turned on populations who already have such limited representation. And so I guess I'm curious, like, how you think about that, how you think about cancel culture, and if this project has changed that at all, and what advice you would give to young activists today, especially those who are grappling with material that, you know, is maybe less well known, advice about how they handle balancing their, like, nuance with integrity.
Yeah. I didn't have cancel culture in mind when I started this project. I just wanted to be authentic in my experience of reading this book and talking about this content with other Black women, and so that was really my only goal. But I do I feel like it's important to contextualize any information that we get, and, you know, take that into account as we assess a thing. That doesn't mean that we have to, you know, change who we are right now or what we believe, but we can take in and receive information and sort of know where things are coming from. Now, how we use that information, or, you know, where we put it, how much importance we place on it, I think is, you know, that's all of our own individual decision that we have to make. We have to decide how much weight to give a thing. And that's work that we have to do for ourselves. I would not consider myself qualified to give advice to young activists.
That's interesting, huh?
I don't. I consider myself someone who is, like, constantly learning and growing, you know, mostly just about myself. And, you know, what I want to do is share some of those insights with other people. You know, perhaps as I grow in this in this journey, that will change. But, like, I do not, you know, deign to assume that I have meaningful things to say to someone who is an activist, in particular. But yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting though, because I think that a lot of activism is based on stories, and what you're doing is reframing a story, which I think is a really useful and valuable skill for somebody who's going to move that into action. But so you had another podcast before this, called Regular Black Radio, which I was obsessed with. I'm pretty sure multiple of my family members out of state also listened to all of it. Yeah. Oh. But I noticed that with The Colored Girl Beautiful, there's different and more underlying assumptions about the audience that sort of allows the podcast to center Black women in a way that regular Black radio did differently or less, maybe. Almost like in this new podcast, you're talking to Black women, and in the other one, you were almost talking about them. Like the other one felt almost like you were talking to me more than the Colored Girl Beautiful is. So I'm curious if you, like, was that intentional, and what led you to change things up that way?
Yeah, it was intentional for me to speak directly to and to center Black women for the Colored Girl Beautiful. For regular Black radio, I was not deliberate enough about my intention to be able to answer that question well. I talked about things that were important to me, things that I had questions about, things I wanted to say out loud, but I mean, honestly, like I don't like to read things that I've written. I don't like to re-listen to things that I've published.
I understand that. Yeah, me too.
But I feel like I've grown a lot as a person since I put out regular Black radio. And I am, if you go on the Twitter page for regular Black radio, it says that it is eventually to be resurrected, which I fully intend. I mean,
nice.
Who knows in real life how that'll shake out? But I do want to return back to that place. I mean, I grew up in a very small town in West Virginia and have realized, over the last 5 to 10 years, how I've internalized some anti-Blackness and haven't been bold enough to like center my own story because of that. I've definitely bought into, at one point in my life, was bought into respectability politics and felt very much like I had to be a certain way and present a certain way in order to be accepted, and have done a lot of work and research and things to unlearn that behavior. But I would love to come back to regular Black radio with a different, perspective, and I mean, probably a little bit of a different focus, just because my interests have changed so much. But I will say that the things that I talked about, I would like to revisit some of those same things, but just like with a little bit of a different spin, if that makes sense.
Yeah, honestly, it seems like, I mean, at the time I was like, well, this is just a really awesome podcast. And I still think that, but now seeing what it has led to, it looks more like you finding your way to the Colored Girl Beautiful.
Yes.
And I imagine that once you work your way through this for a while, it'll bring you back to some of the original things, but you'll have new eyes to look at it.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm planning to do. I'm hoping for, if life and time allow. I would love that.
I'm excited. So I, obviously I'm not a Black woman, but there were a number of things that I could relate to in your show.
Yeah.
I grew up in a really rural area where there were almost no other Jewish people, and my neighbors did not know what Judaism was. Christian neighbors did not know what Judaism was. And I remember being like, the one other Jewish person in school had this mom who was like very stereotypically Jewish, and she would fight on our behalf, but it always made me so uncomfortable because I was like, had internalized not wanting to be associated with her.
Yeah.
And in school, the one thing we learn is about the Holocaust every single year.
Yep.
Obviously, it's very different.
You get it.
Because Jews are, I mean, it's different because Jews have access to way more resources in this country. And most people don't look at me and assume something, but it helped me when I got to college and suddenly sort of realized, like, wow, there are all these examples of Jewish women who do all different kinds of things and look all different ways and act all different ways and own their Jewishness in all different ways. So I'm curious who are your like go-to favorite examples of like the vastness of what young Black girls and women could imagine for themselves?
Oh my gosh, there's so many of them. I mean, one of the biggest reasons I love doing this work is because I get to talk to Black women, and not necessarily people that I know well. You know, a handful of people are people that I know personally, but most of them are people that I, have never met before. I do a lot of sort of, cold calls to people. So I talk to women that I've never met, and just meeting these women, virtually or in person, and getting to hear their stories, that's example enough for me, of how varied and wonderful and different from myself, we all are. I love getting to see that on a regular basis. There are some people who I really look up to in terms of folks who I feel like have done a really wonderful job of being their authentic self, and also, like living very fully. Again, some of the women that I've interviewed, but also like Jill Scott is probably, just one of the most beautiful human beings in the whole world to me.
Totally.
And she makes such beautiful music, and I appreciate how authentic and like vulnerable she is. I find it really meaningful to see Black women who acknowledge the areas where they struggle, in addition to celebrating the things that they rock at. And she is someone who I feel is like a wonderful, wonderful example of that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I guess I have one last question before my like promote all of your stuff question, which is, so like you talk about, and what we've been talking about is how impactful it was when you finally saw an example of a woman who was Black and didn't conform to any of the predetermined ideas of what a Black woman. It was like you were given a couple choices, and to see someone who didn't make any of those choices, or made all of them, or made some of them, and that it meant a lot to you. And I think that in your podcast, every episode is an example of a different one of those women.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm wondering, do you see any consistency amongst all of them? Like any one thing that sort of helps them be successful in fulfilling that part of themselves?
I can't say there's like one quality, but there is, from what I understand, a very intense commitment to authenticity that I think is absolutely essential. And I think that the way that shows up a lot of time is, not everybody has that in every area, but I find very often like the people who do that the best are just committed to this idea of I'm going to be me, and that's fine, that I am enough. And that is something, I think a part of the reason that I am so fascinated by it is because I didn't, grow up thinking about myself that way. I've always had this sort of like hustle. You have to do better and be more and, achieve more than everybody else. And so I'm always amazed at people who, in one or more areas of their life have the ability to just commit to that and stand firm in it and know like this is me, and that's it, full stop. Because there's always a comma for me, like but
it's interesting the way that you frame being able to be authentic with sort of being able to self-soothe your own insecurities. And yeah, I haven't thought about it specifically in those terms before. That's really cool. So season 2, that's coming out when?
Yes. Great question. The plan is for it to come out next week, and I am hoping to have a trailer out in the next couple of days.
Ooh.
And that will have like a definite date
What are you most looking forward to for this season? Like, is there anything in particular that was a blast to do?
Yeah, so I'm really looking forward to featuring more of the women that I'm interviewing. So just more like of their voices in the show.
Cool.
And having that be more of the focus. And so there's a little bit less of my reflections. That's still a thing, but just so we're just sort of shifting the focus a little bit. Between season 1 and season 2, I did a series of mini episodes, which was really just a bunch of tape that I had that I didn't want to go to waste because there were some really wonderful interviews that didn't quite fit into this season as I had planned it. And I discovered that I really enjoy just featuring the voices of these Black women as sort of standalone stories. So I'm sort of bringing that into season 2 with a lot of the content of the episode being the voice of the person that's being interviewed, and just like a little bit of my narration and reflection that's around it.
That's really cool. Yeah, well, I'm super excited. Where can people go to I mean, we already have it out there, but if you say it just for the sake of pumping it.
Yes, absolutely. So you can go to coloredgirlbeautiful.com. You can also find me on Instagram at coloredgirlbeautiful and on Twitter at CGB Podcasts.
Nice.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much. And just so you know, Baltimore's internet right now, I don't know if it's been giving you trouble, but something is weird and YouTube stopped working. So
YouTube's just hard down right now.
We're not live at this moment anymore. But it's being recorded, so we're gonna put it all together and put it up tonight.
Okay, great. Awesome.
Well, thank you so much. I really enjoyed talking to you. Do you have anything else that you want to say before you go?
I don't think so. The show is available in all the podcast places: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you.
Thank you so much. This was lovely.
Yeah, it was. Well, hopefully I'll see you soon when we're allowed to, be around people.
Yes. When they open up outside again.
Yeah, exactly. She's awesome.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I spent much of that interview trying to turn the internet back on, but apparently while I have an inflated view of my powers, I can't do that.
Abby's like, there must be something you can do. I'm just standing here I'm just sitting here vibrating.
What happened? What's
well, you've heard of the rule of threes, right? It's always
yes.
So the first thing is I'm looking at my ping monitor here, and they're fucking dropping. So I don't know. Let's look out the old window here. I don't know. It looks wet. That's probably not good. Not supposed to be like that. And YouTube be down. If you check Twitter, there's some good memes referencing our situation. And the third thing, I don't know. Maybe you know the third thing. I don't know.
But YouTube is down.
It's like they didn't know we had Mobtown Live tonight.
Yeah, it's fucked. They're supposed to treat their subscribers with less than 100 million people like
royalty.
Yeah.
I can't work under these conditions, YouTube.
This is cool. We get to try out our jokes just like we're live, but we're not live. I've never made jokes like this before.
Well, I guess we should move it right along. And we're so lucky to have Nellie on the show. Abby, who's Nellie?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm just want to say again that we're really grateful to have had Estelica, and I'm excited to go back and pay full attention to that interview because if nothing else, listening to her talk is
her sweet,
just
soothing
dreamy
voice.
So up next we have our musical guest, Nellie Sorensen, and Nellie is a guitar player, a mandolinist, a singer, and ceramicist, and she recorded some tunes for us, and she is also here on the stream. Welcome, Nellie. How you doing?
I'm all right. How you doing?
Yeah, I mean, other than not being able to fix YouTube single-handedly, I'm pretty good.
I know. Of course it would go down. Shout out to my family.
Yeah, Nellie's whole family is like, but the tubes. But don't worry, we'll get Nellie to you. Don't worry. So Nellie, I think let's just go ahead and play the first video.
Yeah, let's do it. Follow me down. Take my hand. I'll follow you down. Try to find a land in a sea of doubt. It's been a while since I felt this way. I've had my trials and seen some bad days, but the struggle and the pain only doubles when you shout my name. Take me down, touch my face, kiss my lips, and get your taste. Take me down, touch my face, carry it off, take the blame. Haze heavy, it's leaving you scars. Oh, and I can't keep steady to come this far here with you tonight. I'm doing it wrong, not taking my time. Oh, but who the hell's right when they say that love is blind? Oh, the struggle and the pain only doubles when you shout my name. Take me down, touch my face, kiss my lips, and get your taste. Take me down, touch my face, carry it off, take the blame.
So that was Take Me Down, which a song I'm pretty familiar with because we played it together back in the day.
Yeah.
In
At
Sweet Sarrow.
Yeah. One live show. We did it.
That's it?
Yeah, that's it.
We only did it. Wait, really?
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, but it's
Yeah, it was
such
for
a good.
the album release.
Oh, it's such a good song though.
Thanks.
I wanted to ask you, speaking of shows, when is the last time that you played a live show?
Well, the last time I played a live show at a venue,
Yeah.
wow,
actually was even longer than when COVID started. So if it's been 11 months since the start of the year, I was out of the country for 3 months before that. So I don't know, the middle of last year, maybe. It's been over 12 months since I played my last show in a venue. But actually, really luckily, you and I played some of those sidewalk shows.
Right. Yes, I should be clear with our audience that Nellie and I are frequent collaborators, and we did the sidewalk serenades with Creative Alliance, and it was very fun.
Yeah, it was a godsend for sure, because it's hard not playing shows.
Yeah, what has it been like for, like, as a performing artist during this time?
It's pretty depressing, actually. I don't know, just that energy as a musician, you really feed off of it, or at least I do. I mean, there are plenty of musicians who don't play live shows, but for me in particular, like being on stage with my band members and the crowd and playing music that we've worked really hard on is, you know, a big reason of why I play. And so it's definitely had a pretty drastic effect on the music that I produce for myself, really.
Yeah, and I should say that you are a member of Haint Blue, which is one of the coolest bands in Baltimore.
Woo woo.
And do you want to say anything to introduce this next song?
This next song is an oldie. It was, you know, it takes me a really long time to write songs, so this song is probably written over the course of like 2 years maybe. And it was during a time when my grandfather's health was failing, and so that's sort of where that song comes from.
Wow, thank you for that.
Yeah. That one's called The Move.
The Move. What? It's beautiful. When how did you know that you wanted to play music?
Well, my sister started taking guitar lessons when she was 7. And I thought, anything that she could do, I could do better. So when I turned 7 years old, I started taking lessons too. And this is actually, this is the guitar I learned on at 7 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. Really old nylon string, Yamaha. It still actually has bite marks on it from when my sister used to get frustrated.
And she would bite it?
Yeah, she'd bite the guitar.
That's amazing.
Yeah, she might not have wanted me to say that, but sorry.
The stuff of legend.
I know. Yeah. So, I don't know, it just kind of like happened. I don't, at some point I kind of got bored, or not even bored, just didn't want to play classical stuff anymore and wanted to rock out. And I feel like that started my journey.
Can you tell the story of playing in the Micah Theater Program band?
So Micah, which is the college I graduated from, the Maryland Institute College of Art, I guess it must have been my senior year, senior year, they started a program for a theater program, and they needed a band, and they already had a guitarist. But in high school, I had played in, a folk band with a guy who played the mandolin. And so that was the only other stringed instrument I could think of that I could possibly pull off in the time that they might have needed me to learn it. So, they were like, oh, we already have a guitarist, because that's what I tried out with. And so I said, oh, well, I play the mandolin, even though I had no idea how to play the mandolin. And they were like, okay, great. And I didn't even audition for it. But then, of course, I had to learn how to play the mandolin in like a week or something like that.
And you didn't even have one, right?
No, I didn't have one. I went right after that. I went out to some bluegrass store in the middle of Maryland and bought a mandolin.
And you did? And no one knew, right?
No one knew. No one knew until after the final show. I ended up telling Trevor, who actually Abby and I played in a band with, or a few bands with, that I indeed had not known how to play the instrument before auditioning. So,
I mean, that's what it takes. I think that's amazing.
Yeah, sometimes you gotta jump.
Shall we roll on to the next song?
Yes, let's.
I know that it's been a while, looking through the glass at the growing grass. I'm just passing time. I knew I never cared, but I was unprepared for an eternity at home. For an eternity at home. For an eternity at home. getting tall. I haven't moved all day. On your 7th hike, is that a brand new bike? Oh, when you've taken out clay. I know I never cared, but I was unprepared for an eternity at home. For an eternity at home. For an eternity at home. I'm trying to be optimistic, but it is pretty damn impossible. I'm trying to get the hang of it. I've heard that it's plausible.
Woo! So you called that song COVID song. Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, it's COVID song. It's sort of a working title. The other one is melodramatic melody. It's actually one of the faster songs I've ever written, and I think I would probably consider it still a work in progress because I feel like, especially during this period, you can really get into these mindsets of just like, oh, woe is me. And so that song in particular, I was trying to have more fun with and not take my songwriting as seriously. And so there's definitely a more performative aspect to that song in particular, because it just feels like you need to get that out. Like it's like COVID is bad. The situation is bad, but sometimes it's like way worse, or our brain is making it way worse than, it actually might be. So it helped to put that in perspective, like, oh, COVID, everything sucks, but,
But like, we're still okay.
Yeah, we're still okay.
I wanted to ask you as a person, like, we're good friends, so I know, like, you're kind of, I don't want to necessarily say you're an introvert, but like, I learned very quickly that I should never like throw the mic to you on stage for banter, because you just hated it so much. You would like simultaneously freeze up and also like just try really hard, but also like I could tell you were like, no, Abby, like. So I'm curious, I think, like, how do you reconcile being a performing artist with that kind of mentality where it's not about like, I want to be a star? I mean, maybe that is what it's about, but.
Well, I'd have to say that the spotlight is not my natural habitat. And kudos to like you and Mike Kahn, who's the head of, the other band that I'm in. Like, you guys perform and you're in it, you're in the spotlight, they're your songs. And that's really scary. And I think you would be right in saying I'm definitely more on the introvert side of that spectrum. I like supporting people. I like, making what other people work on greater. And so I actually don't really share my own stuff very often. So it's very weird. And I don't like it.
But it's so good that I'm really glad you're doing it.
Thank
and I
you.
think it's important for people to hear that like performing isn't just about that one thing. There's so many like it's much more, it's a deeper thing than that. And that's something
Totally.
you really bring to the table. You're also a ceramics artist. I'm looking around to see, I may have successfully cleared my room of mugs, which is unusual. But where can people get their very own Nelly mug? They're really the best.
Oh, well, I'm like pretty terrible at self-promotion. So I did try to start, oh, there's one, an Instagram. I did create an Instagram account. I think it's called Sorensen Pottery, Sorensen Ceramics, maybe. I don't even know what Sorensen Ceramics. Thank you. So you can contact me through there. I think I haven't posted on that in like months. But I do have a website also. I think it's EleanorSorensen.com. But yeah, probably Instagram is the place to go.
It's really like I can attest that using your Nelly mug in the morning just makes your coffee that much sweeter.
Oh my God.
It's getting me through quarantine. So let's see. We just have, I think, one more song to play. But before that, I want to ask you, what's your favorite Magic card and why?
I love playing Magic the Gathering, but I'm actually really bad at it. So I don't have a favorite card, but I am playing a red-black chaos deck right now. That's pretty fun. I play Commander mostly in a very small friend group, and that's about the extent of my Magic playing.
I don't know what any of that means, but that's awesome. And I think Magic cards look really cool.
They do.
So what's this last song?
This last song is actually a cover by an artist that I feel very inspired by. Her name is Courtney Barnett, and this is called Anonymous Club.
Nelly Sorensen, my BFF, thank you so much for coming on Mobtown Live. And
thank you for having me.
Recording this set. Thanks, Rachel, for the video.
Yes, oh my God.
To everyone who's waited with bated breath for our video to premiere because of the technical difficulties, I know that it's worth it. So thanks for bearing with us. Thanks, Nelly.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you, Rachel Dwiggin. She's my wife and I love her. Just had to put that in there.
Started an anonymous club.
Yay! Thank you so much, Nellie.
Wonderful. So good. So good. Courtney Barnett is also great.
Love Nellie's voice so much. Did you hear that?
Yeah, cat's in the way.
Cat's about to be more in the way. And there we go.
There it is. There is classic.
So Michael, you got a little something for us.
Yeah.
Based on my request. I'm gonna chatter on occasion.
You're part of this. Yeah, no, I want us to have a dialogue. Because otherwise I will just go off into my own weird land. I gotta get rid of this cat, excuse me. So Sarah asked me about how democracies die or something, and I'm an expert on that shit. But then it got me thinking. It got me thinking about how recently I was reading the book of Genesis, because that's what you do. And that, the fall of humankind, eating the apple, that they're in paradise and bliss, and then shit goes sideways. And that got me thinking about golden age type shit, right? Which is a recurring theme in, sociology and literature and politics and everything. The Greeks had it. They had a literal thing they called the golden age. The cat is awesome.
Can you explain what you mean by golden age type shit?
The idea is that people in general seem to be haunted by this notion that there was a time previous to the one we're in where life was good great and perfect. And in the context of like mythology, that can be blasted way back into the past. But politically, sometimes it can be as recently as, let's say, like the 1950s, or it can be ill-defined and not at all a thing. The idea is, let's just get back to it. And there's a general cultural consensus where we say these things. We go like, let's get back to the time when people had values, right? And all of us go, yeah, that would be nice. And then you think, like, when the fuck was that exactly? Like, when were people demonstrating these supposed values? So what got me sort of cranking on that was obviously the Trump administration, Make America Great Again, is appealing to some nebulous previous time when it was great that we failed to live up to. It must be.
Which I guess in some ways it must be easier to think that things would be great if not for this group of people, because it's easier to point to that than accept that we're living in chaos and haven't gotten it right before, probably.
Yeah, that othering enemy thing. Well, that's what got me into sort of pondering, because one of the characteristics of fascism and authoritarianism in general, but fascism in particular, is this golden age thinking. Is they always trot this out, and then, like you said, they always have sometimes one, sometimes many, like an other that they can get mad at, that they use to sort of direct energy and rage at. And so I got on the internet, and I actually did a little guessing myself to figure out like what people say. I think it came out pretty good. I got on the internet and I looked for characteristics, like sort of the defining categories of what makes something fascist. I'm going to just trot some out real fast.
Cool.
Nationalism and pageantry. You know what I mean?
I never heard about that.
Unifying behind a common leader. The military is glorified and funded at the expense of other social programs. Control of the media / hardcore opposition to what is the media. Boy, liberals, do I love hearing you say that. Fucking idiots. Anti-intellectualism. Another one that's on the left. We'll get to that. A perceived sense of
it must be accessible rather than... Sorry.
Yeah,
go ahead.
A perceived sense of victimhood. This is my favorite one. The Sodom and Gomorrah mentality, which is that the rural areas are pure and true, and urban environments are wicked and prone to receiving God's wrath. This one fucking blew my... And so, we're back.
So where were we? What was the... Gomorrah, what were we talking about?
We were going through a fun list of characteristics of fascism, and then we landed on Sodom and Gomorrah as the premise that cities are wicked and vile, and that the true people live in the country. And then this one I got obsessed with, and I did not predict, was religion and government intertwined, which is, if you think about it, just of course that's what happens, but also how crazy is it that evangelical Christianity and the Republican Party are kind of indistinguishable? Like there's no It's wildly inconsistent, but they do it.
I mean, it makes complete sense if you need, like, if you're trying to make yourself the highest power in the land, then you need God behind you. If, you know, the people that you're appealing to believe in God. I think, right?
God and anime.
Well, so when I went through this list, the last one is opposition to human rights. I think we can say that one. That box is checked as well. I made sure that I was pulling from sources that were pre-Trump's presidency, so they weren't sort of poisoned by wanting to line up with him. And it's astonishing how obviously, like the Republican Party in general, but you know, under Trump in particular, sort of lining up with this stuff. And what we're witnessing right now is sort of this end game, which is creating an alternative reality entirely, and then trying to force other people to live in it. Namely, all of us who are saying, like, "Pardon me, like, there's no election fraud." And they're like, "But there is," and you're like, "Why?" And they said, "Well, weren't we just talking about that? Obviously, we need to discuss this issue." Like the madness. I think one of the things that it really sort of interests me about digging into this is that the golden age thing is utterly unreal, right? There was no time in American history that was lovely and we all had virtue. It's been politically gridlocked and horrifying the entire time. There are times where white people got along well together, but that was, you know, also segregation, and then there was slavery. There is no time where everybody who lived on this continent was like being civil at each other.
Right.
And you see a lot of desire for that on the internet. Well, like, look, we could just talk and maybe we could work out our problems. It's a deeply stupid ethos that we're tangling with. Like, if you think about any of this, like Mussolini, Hitler, Trump, what sort of marks all of their characters and behavior is just being fucking fruit bat weirdos. Like, and it's we don't want to say that because of the horrors that they committed, and that's one of the existential terrors of the universe, is that people that stupid can fuck things up that badly. But like, they're absurd, they're ridiculous. And I'm gonna bring it full circle and then we'll chat.
Cool.
I watched the other night Charlie Chaplin's movie The Great Dictator, which is Charlie Chaplin plays both the dictator, who was clearly Hitler, and it was filmed in 1939, right before shortly before the U.S. entered the war. And he plays a Jewish barber who is being, like, they're basically going to send to a camp. And the merciless mockery of Hitler. He does these whole like rally speeches. Speaking of which, rallies. He does where he speaks fake German and says things like sauerkraut and like, I think the phrase like bread and kraken, or no, cheese and kraken. But he has that like emotional energy, and it was such a like profoundly liberating feeling watching it. So that's my recommendation for this week, because it just put like Trump and all of these fucking stooges and the entire Republican Senate, those asshats, those super rating fucking weasels, it just puts them in perspective as very, very dangerous, and we need to stop them completely. But also, like, you should give yourself a chance once in a while to go, these are turds. These are human turds that we don't have to take seriously in an intellectual way. We don't have to listen and go, well, there are two sides. There's not. They're turds.
Yeah, no. I mean, there's two sides. They're not the other side. Like, you know, like, they're trying to make all of us reasonable people on one side, when there's actually nuance amongst us. It makes me think, because like, I've been struggling a lot. Like, I genuinely don't think that half of this country is stupid. I think that people act for reasons and have the opinions they have for reasons. I mean, some people are stupid, lots of them, but not all of them. And, you know, I think some of it is selfishness and self-interest, but some of it too is just like a total lack of education. I'm curious why that wasn't on your list, right? Of like degrading the education system such that, you know, people weren't taught about that list that you just did. You know what I mean?
That's a fascinating, we've talked about that before. Like eviscerating education leads to a population that is being prepared for trades in high school as opposed to learning how to be a citizen.
Right.
I would love to do some research and figure out if there was like before the rise of certain dictators, there was a attack on the educational system. Trump has obviously done that with his, we're going to try and defund school systems that teach there were problems in America.
Yeah, though it clearly started long before Trump and set the stage for him to have lots of voters who don't recognize the signs that they're being manipulated.
Yeah.
Can I jump in here a second?
Yeah.
So, to wit, I would commend to you a book, What You Are Getting Wrong About Appalachia. It's by sociologist Elizabeth Catt, and a part of the country where I'm from, and I think is highly misconceptualized and kind of derogated as Trump country, has a really incredible history of labor and organizing, and also economic suppression that I think is hyper relevant to this conversation.
I had asked Abby why her state alma mater, I don't know, is that Latin track, Michael? Why it went red, and she pretty much said that I should read this book. So very encouraging.
I'm pretty sympathetic to rural situations. I think one of the hard things for people to understand is that, like, I don't have it out for like Trump voters in the same way that I don't have it out for like German soldiers in World War II, like non-SS people. Like, you can engage in this mass victimization where basically it's people being promised some kind of future. And
and we pay taxes. Like we pay taxes that go towards war and putting kids in cages. So like there's only such a high horse we can get on.
I think the fascist fear, because these impulses are in people and they can be played upon. But like the fascist fear involves when the people that represent them are so debased and corrupted that, for example, like if you're a Republican senator right now, you don't do anything, you don't legislate, you just sit there and then try to cover Trump's ass. Like he was rejected by the majority of American voters and they are carrying his water for him. Like that is sort of the problem, is right. the idea that people will look at the brutal, like realpolitik. I'm going to do exactly what I need to stay in power, regardless of the consequences for anybody else. And then being able to turn around and say, well, that's what everybody does. It's clearly not.
Yeah, I wonder, that kind of leads me to my next question, or sort of what led me to bringing this question to you. It seems like a lot of the things that we're doing on the left are directly feeding into the fascist narratives, and sort of the by demonizing certain groups of people, we are doing exactly what those in power want us to do. Because the idea is that what they're saying to people who are vulnerable, but also being made afraid by things like Fox News and Mitch McConnell and whatever, is they don't understand you and they don't care about you and they want to erase you. And so follow us if you want to survive. And then we on the left often come in and are like, these fucking idiots are voting for this person. They must be so stupid and evil. And then police their language on everything. And I mean, I guess I'm playing devil's advocate a little bit, which maybe isn't the best thing to do, but like, are there examples in history of people having methodologies for sort of working against or distracting capitalism in real time, ideologic, or not capitalism, fascism? Does that make any sense?
I mean, I'd be interested to hear what Abby has to say about a bunch of this. My instinct is to say that the strongest thing that people can and have done is maintain a perspective that doesn't I want all Trump voters to have health insurance and shelter,
right,
and human rights, right? I want them to have all the rights that I have.
Right.
I don't want them to have extra power over other people because they feel pissed off.
Right. And I guess that, leads to like, if you've always been given an overabundance of certain power, it feels like something's being taken away from you when originally the baseline shouldn't have been you having it.
But like a mass propaganda campaign to convince us all that, like the more than 4 years now of like hand wringing, like, do we understand people? Like, no, a lot of us don't understand Appalachia, but you don't need to understand that to understand that you should be against this stuff.
Right.
But now I want to hear what Abby has to say. Sorry.
You're muted.
Yes, I would say that we know the strategy of divisiveness to be a strategy by which the wealthy and powerful maintain their power. So by giving people someone that they're better than, like, well, you don't have health insurance, but you're better than immigrants or people of color or women or people with special needs. That gives them a modicum of, that's the way that we're kept down. And especially when it comes to class and the class struggle.
Right.
It's just like poor whites in the slavery South, like, you may not have anything, but at least you're not a slave.
Right.
You have a, like, we'll give you some position that's not the lowest to keep you kind of chill.
Yeah. And I just, some of it I think about like how quickly I've noticed people who are like on our side of the political spectrum using terms like cockroach or whatever to refer to Trump supporters, like, which for me has quite a historical meaning. And like, I think that dehumanizing someone, even when, or especially when they're the ones doing something kind of fucked up, perpetuates exactly what those in power are trying to get us to do, which is not see each other as humans anymore, so that we can, fight amongst ourselves instead of turning on them.
There is this deep-seated desire to find an ethos that will fix everything, and then if we just stick to it hard enough, it'll be okay. That's never happened up till now. And every time we get too attached to one, we start going, well, all right, so we got some people who are being really uncooperative. If we kill them, finally we'll just have the good folks around and we can have the
right. And then I'm like, dear
land.
liberals, 10 minutes till you put me in a camp. Like, I'm not.
%100% for movements regularly dip into anti-Semitism.
Right.
Why? Like, unnecessary. But like there's that pull towards simplicity. These guys are bad. These guys are good. And the truth is that there's fascist impulses on the left constantly, as we sort of discussed. Like we got the anti-intellectualism, the desire for a leader. Like, if only we could have AOC for president, then we wouldn't have to think about anything ever again. Or responsibility.
And we could go back to brunch.
We could go back to brunch.
Make America brunch again.
Oh no. I mean, I like brunch. It's a meal. But yeah, no. Nope.
It makes me nervous. Anyway, do you have anything else to add, anyone?
I think let's call it.
Let's do it. Watch The Great Dictator.
That's the one that all those clips on the internet are from. I've even heard of that one.
Old-timey shit.
Awesome. So I imagine we're skipping top comments for this week.
No.
Let's trot them out.
Never.
Okay, let's do it real quick then. Here we go.
Here we go.
All right. Michael, you read them.
Okay. Dear parents, sorry that I haven't called you. That's because both of Sarah Sullivan's parents watch this show.
Yeah, and I hadn't called them.
After the election.
Yeah.
I just thought it was funny you put it in the chat.
Yeah.
Well,
so big and
it's
important.
if you don't have time to call your parents, just chat with them on your weekly show. I mean,
I had a couple drinks. My mom said, "I thought you might have been half in the bag." Is what she told me.
I don't even know what that means.
Yeah, that's old time.
I think it means a little drunk. I don't know. But we were all exhausted and terrified, so
Next one, Hachi.
Yeah.
Cindy Sullivan. No worries. We've got 2 others, meaning 2 other children, so Sarah can be sort of in the dustbin and it's okay. Although I'd be curious how they would rank their children.
Oh, this was good.
Ha!
Sarah,
you call me every day. Don't you call your mom every day? That might have been the greatest comment we've ever gotten.
50 pink
I missed that
Bill
one.
Sullivan.
You know that Cindy, who is a badass, like the hair stood up on her head and the claws came out.
She thought it was funny.
This is brave, Bill. It was brave.
They have the same sense of humor, so yeah, worked out.
Is that why they got married or got divorced?
Probably both.
Hey-o!
Zing!
Oh.
Christine tries. Everything's gonna be all right.
Christine
Maybe.
tries to make a pun.
We were talking about cheese in some capacity, I think, and also the election. Maybe, I don't know.
She loves puns. She's super into that shit.
It's true.
Samuel Kent. When do we all get to post our own piles of single socks?
That's a good question. We should do that.
Michael at mobtownballroom.com.
Send Michael your socks.
Don't send me your socks, people.
Just put it all into an envelope and send it. We'll give you his address. if
One
you email
sock
me.
at a time.
That was because of Mabel's sock puppet show. And the sock was singing about how it liked to eat
Oh,
socks,
it was
I
so
think.
cute. I should
It
watch
was.
that video again. It's really nice.
Next.
Hachi. I totally feel melancholy about Christmas.
That's me. I
That's
got
a-
one.
comment in
Have
there?
comments.
I feel like there's any day when you could just say that. I feel like that's a very Hachi thing to say.
Well, I actually, since you bring it up, or since I brought it up, and then you brought it up, and then I brought it up again, my favorite memory is of a young lad in the Boston area. My grandmother had season tickets to the Pops, so the best thing to do on Christmas is to go to the Boston Symphony Hall or whatever it's called when it's snowing, and
I've totally
drink
done
a,
that. Not on
drink-
Christmas Day, but right around it.
drink a Shirley Temple and listen to the guy, listen to the beautiful symphony play and wait in anticipation for the guy with the whip to fucking crack it like his life depends on it in the back of the symphony. That's how I knew that I wanted to grow up to be a whipper. Next comment.
Hey, Brad. Christine tries. Sequin, I guess that's me. Which sage was best known for his footwear? Her response, Socrates.
I also love puns.
Oh, Michael, you're giving the angry smile.
Puns are lost on me. They always happen. I know it's a thing, but everybody I know who's into puns has this sort of like satanic look in their eyes that comes over them when pun time happens.
You
Yeah,
know,
they're not very as punny as they think, you know.
Michael, I think that it's just, you just don't get it. It's funny because it's Socrates.
No, Michael, you don't understand. His name is Socrates, and we're talking about socks.
I'm fine. I'm okay.
So, my question is, I'm not
That's good,
sure if I read these and blocked them out or I missed them. And if I blocked them out, was it because my head is a fog when I'm making these shows, or because Michael's right and it's a dirty pun?
It's a fantastic pun. What's the next comment?
Barbara Beagle. I just moved to my own place, and this is the first thing I'm watching. My first night staying here alone, and it's just lovely.
Aw, Barbie.
You know, occasionally, whatever bullshit we get up to, makes people happy, and it's not explicable, but I'll take it. You know, when I'm at the pearly gates, I'm like St. Peter. He's like, "What would you do, Mike?" I'll be like, I made Barbara Beagle happy that one night.
You're like,
with 4 other people.
Yo, St. Peter, have you heard about Mobtown Live?
You know Barbara Beagle is Barbie, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool.
But at the same time, part of the Mobtown charm is we might still keep doing this if we didn't even have an audience. Like, I think we're almost to the point where we enjoy each other's
we don't have an
company.
audience right now.
Mobtown
literally,
live?
there's no audience. YouTube died.
Mobtown time shifted. It's not as catchy.
Well, folks, it's been another great week on Mobtown Live.
Yeah, thank you all so much for coming by and watching and planning to watch it live, then not watching it live, and then watching it not live.
It was really a roller coaster.
Yeah, it was. But yeah, thanks, folks.
Don't
And thanks
forget to donate your $10.
Yeah, if you're watching
because
this.
we still did this thing, and we still had these amazing guests. Venmo at Mobtown-Live. And you can ask your kids how to do it if you don't know what that means.
Gross.
And go listen to the Colored Girl Beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm not sure we've mentioned it yet, but we are on a winter break, despite it being 75 degrees out every day in
Starting when?
Baltimore. Starting next week, man. It's our last episode.
Oh, it's the last one.
No, we have one more show.
Uh-oh.
We do have a Christmas special in the works.
Oh.
No, our break starts on the 25th.
Boom.
We'll discuss it when we're done recording. but I either way, we're going to be taking a break for the holidays, except for our Christmas / Hanukkah / holiday special, which is going to be pretty hilarious. So stay tuned for that, everybody. And we might see you next week, or we might not. Either way, we'll make an announcement.
All right. Bye.
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 Boom.
Fuck. The butt. Fuck. Nah, you're not sitting on my lap. Fucking hell. Fucking feral. Fuck, my ass hurts. Fuck! I ended on the wrong note.